It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back at Hometown Commander Eric for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out those links in the description below. I'd appreciate it. But today we're starting a whole week celebrating the new PlayStation and Secret Lair drop together. Characters from different games. And today we're talking about Aloy, Savior of Meridian from the Horizon games. Aloy is a 5-mana Simic legend with Vigilance and Reach. And it says whenever one or more of our artifact creatures attack, we're going to discover X, where X is the greatest power among them. So remember, when you discover, you exile from the top until you hit a non-land card with mana value equal to that number or less. We can cast it without paying its mana cost or put it into our hand and then put the rest on the bottom. Discover is a really interesting mechanic. And I kind of like the idea that this is tied to artifact creatures. Makes sense with the Horizon games. And that it's based on power, because that just provides some really dangerous value from this Discover. There's a lot of very big and easy to get in artifact creatures, and that's basically going to be the goal. Get these big artifact creatures in. Simic has a lot of artifacts matter support that we're going to kind of throw in on the back end just to help protect our big creatures, and we're just going to try to run over our opponents for a good time. Asterisk on the deck cost here just because it's as of before the release of the Secret Lair. So basically all you need to do for that one would be add that and then the cost of the Secret Lair. But of course that cost is going to change over time. So just of course check out the deck list for the most updated price. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Well, truthfully, there's a lot of options when it comes to artifact creatures. And we see, of course, some of them in our Secret Lair, right? In Blightsteel Colossus, getting that pretty reprint as one of the characters from the games, right? And Blightsteel is a very dangerous creature in itself. Trample, Infect, Indestructible. Ancient Stodal should come down for a little bit cheaper at flash speed. And it's a big 12/12, right? Auton Soldier is one that I think is really fun. It comes in as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary. It's an artifact, it shoots other types, and has myriad. So this can be a really dangerous way to copy a lot of our really key artifact creatures and get some big value. Or Auton Soldier could come down as a copy of Aloy and basically just give you a second Aloy trigger every combat and put up some real value that way. Cityscape Leveler on cast, or whenever it attacks, just throws up the one target non-land permanent. You give them a Power Stone. A great ability can unearth back from the graveyard temporarily if you need it there. Darksteel Judgment, power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, and it attacks each combat if able. We're going to try to have some of these effects like it and Emissary Escort, because we have artifacts that can make artifact tokens, so this number should ideally be going up over the course of the game, meaning things like Darksteel Juggernaut and Emissary Escort and Filigree Attendant should ideally just keep getting bigger and bigger and more of a threat to our opponents. Maelstrom Colossus is going to have Cascade, very similar to Discover. The only difference between Cascade and Discover is that the mana value has to be less than the thing that you cascade from, and you can only cast it about paying its mana cost. You don't get to put it into your hand, you just throw it back on the bottom if you don't cast it. And then you have something like fun like Kappa Cannon there. Whenever another creature or another artifact enters, you put a counter on it. It can't be blocked this turn. That goes off every time, meaning Kappa Cannoneer could very quickly grow and become a real threat attacking our opponents. Master of Ethereum, again, buffing all of our artifact creatures, growing for each artifact you control. Metalwork Colossus should come down pretty quickly for its big 11 cost, but it only gets reduced by non-creature artifacts. So, of course, having other big artifacts isn't going to reduce the Colossus, but hopefully the Colossus can come down pretty cheap and be a nice big body for us. Mycosynth Golem has affinity for artifacts, and also gives artifact creature spells we control affinity for artifacts. So getting reduced for the number of artifacts we have is a huge deal. And it's also just going to really help us get these big boys down quicker. Phyrexian Metamorph can come as a copy of any artifact or creature. This is an important effect to have around because not only does it just affect artifacts, but it can also just copy another really big creature. And a lot of those big artifact creatures in our deck, Blightsteel, Metalwork Colossus, are not legendary. So this is really nice because then you can come in and get alternate copies of them. A creature that's going to really help with not only growing its size, but also increasing the number of artifacts we have is Threefold Thunderhulk. So it comes in with 3 counters on it. Whenever it enters or attacks, you make a number of gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power, and then you can sack another artifact to grow it. But the really cool part is that it can grow over time, and it's going to increase our artifact number to help us care about something like Urza's command, which can make those great construct tokens. So those constructs that get +1/+1 for each artifact you control are going to be a real threat. And of course, over the course of the game, right, they're going to grow bigger and bigger that we can take advantage of. Brotherhood Vertibird, and then Uthros Research Craft, once we get it stationed all the way up, are going to become artifacts that can become creatures, and their power equal to the number of artifacts we control, so those can definitely be really big. Lumbering World Wagon grows for the number of lands we control. Whenever it enters or attacks, you can go search for a basic and bring it tapped. I love the idea of something like this. World Wagon should be able to grow pretty quickly and can be a nice creature for us to crew up and get attacking with to make sure we're ramping into bigger and more mana for more and more of the things we're going to try to cast. But as far as caring about artifacts, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to use things like Iron Spider and Steel Overseer, right? Tapping to put a counter on all of our artifact creatures, growing them, right? Since Aloy's ability is based on power, right? Higher the power, the bigger the discover we can make. I love the idea of something like Padim to give them all X-proof and draw us a card on our upkeep if we have the artifact with the highest mana value. You know, of course, you have things like Urza, right? Comes in and makes that construct, lets our artifacts tap for blue, and has that powerful ability to shuffle and exile the top and paying without paying its mana cost. But of course, Urza just bringing in that construct is going to be really good because I think constructs are a key thing for us to try to find. Is they're going to be really big threats. Fabricate in War of Invention on the next slide going to help us go get the key artifacts we want to see. Desynchronization can hopefully be a one-sided board wipe for us, returning each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand, so artifacts, legends, and sagas. Most of our decks should be artifacts and legends, so we should be safe. It's just right about whether or not our opponents, right, are going to be safe from it. And then with the constructs, we're going to add things like Adaptive Omni Tool and Nettle Cyst that buff a creature for each artifact we control. So now, even the bigger creatures can get even bigger, with these. And the key thing about the Omni Tools and some of these other artifacts we're talking about is they all should be really easy to discover into. I think it's really easy to forget when you're building these discover piles that you need things you want to discover into. It's not just always going to be about playing some big creature and discovering into other big creatures. It's going to happen, but it's not going to happen all the time. And I think it's also about understanding like what else can I discover into and making sure that all of our value pieces on the back end can really help out our board. Of course, you have things like Sculpting Steel, very similar to Phyrexian Metamorph, can just come in as any artifact on the battlefield, ours or our opponents, right? Metamorph was just a creature artifact. Sculpting Steel is any artifact, but there's a lot of really powerful artifacts that can come in as a copy of. Synthesizer is pretty great as well, as long as an artifact with mana value 3 or greater comes in, you get one of those constructs. Again, almost every creature in our deck is going to fulfill that, making sure we get one of them. And Synthesizer is not legendary, meaning that if we find a way to make a copy of it or using Sculpting Steel or something like that, we can have it come in as a copy of the Synthesizer and have access to more of them. And then you have lands that care about artifacts, Academy Ruins, Buried Ruin, being able to get things back from the graveyard back to our hand or the back on top. And Ventress Fair, as long as we have enough artifacts, can go digging for one and put it into our hand. The Mycosynth Gardens, you can pay X and tap it to become copy of a target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. Again, I love the idea of that. Getting to pick what you want, and I think most of the time it's going to become, a copy of a key value artifact you have sitting on the battlefield. But I think we got to remember we're also in green. Green has access to a lot of really cool things. We have things like Garruk Uprising that can give all of our creatures trample and draw us card when these big artifacts come in. Note that it does not say non-token for either of those two abilities. So for making those constructs or we're having other artifact, creature tokens come in. If they're big enough, they're going to draw for us. Otherwise, all of our other big artifacts are going to draw. Guardian Project will draw us a card every time a non-token creature that doesn't share a name with any of our other creatures comes in, which should be almost all of them, right? Drawing us some cards, helping us dig through our deck. And then, something like Beastmaster Ascension can just help buff all of our creatures all the way as long as we can attack and put quest counters on it. I love this for our creatures that are making these gnome tokens or these Thopter tokens so they can become, really nice threats in their own right. But I've said it before on the show and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Aloy. And I think going into testing, there's more ways that we can look at what we want from an artifact creature. Dawnsire was one I really went back and forth on. I love the idea of Dawnsire, not only because it could be a big 2020 that's going to be a real threat, but because it's going to be pretty easy to discover into. I wasn't exactly sure how I felt about spacecraft in the deck, or how often I felt like I was going to be able to station them up and turn them into a real threat. I really went back and forth on like Thunderous Velocipede. It's going to have our creatures come in with counters on them, and I think it's just probably a net positive, and it's not a bad creature in its own right. And it's going to be pretty easy to discover into. And then you have something like Platinum Empyrean or Platinum Angel. These artifact creatures that have killer abilities. Platinum Imperium has your life total can't change. Platinum Angel says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. These are just options of more artifact creatures that have more game-centric abilities rather than just being really good value. I basically just tried to pick artifacts that had really good value, or I thought could be really big threats to pair with these nice green, trample enablers and things like that. But I think there's other options for artifact creatures out there. I think that's where you can really make this deck your own. Do you want this to be vehicles? Do you want this to be spacecraft? Do you want this to just be these big golems, these big crazy creatures that you can deal with? And there's so many ways for you to make that list of artifact creatures your own. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays. It's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands are we looking to keep and how we're going to get them set up. Here we've got a 3-laner with Kadama's Reach. So we do have some ramp there. Sludge Class Seed Ship is a spacecraft that once we stationed up can actually help us cheat creatures from our hand on the battlefield. We see Garruk's Uprising for that trample and that draw, and then Fabricate can go get us any artifact we want to, which is really interesting. And I think it's something to keep in our back pocket, right, as we step through these first few turns. So now's where we hit our really first stage, line here. Do you go with this? Do you go with something like Emery or Master of Ethereum? I really like the Kadama's Reach here, just to continue to ramp through. I think it just makes a ton of sense. Eventually, right, we're going to need the mana, and of course now we see something like Soul Ring, which is pretty great. So we've got 6 mana. Remember, Aloy's 5. Aloy doesn't have to attack, though. It's the artifact creatures that have to attack. So we got to remember that in the back of our mind, that we need artifact creatures, creatures to attack. I like something like Emery, because remember, Emery can cast artifacts out of our graveyard. I don't even mind the Seed Ship. The Seed Ship, we could like... So this is a, 3/3 right now? So we could kind of get this, get this started and station it up. Now as we come to this turn, 4, 5, 6, 8 mana. Aloy's 5, and Aloy could actually help turn on that Seed Ship. I was going to say, if I Fabricate, what am I looking for? The answer is pretty much anything you want. Is it something like Blightsteel if you want to, get that party going? Could be nice with something like Emery, because then, if somebody just destroys it, you can get it back out of the graveyard. Do you want something like Kappa Cannoneer that can, grow and become a threat, right, in the long term that way? I was going to say, I love the idea of something like Threefold Thunderhawk that's going to help increase the number of artifacts we have, just because that way Ethereum's going to buff them, and you're going to potentially be able to get more of them each turn. I think pretty much my other plan this turn is just to play Aloy, and then play Aloy and then station up. I'm going to go with the Thunderhawk. I think there's probably an argument for playing the... there's probably a real argument for playing getting the Blightsteel, of course, obviously, but I think I'm going to have some fun here. So I've got to station this up. Aloy's 3. Master of Ethereum still only 3. But then, my thought is when the Seed Ship attacks, we're going to be able to discover 4, and we're going to be able to put the Thunderhawk in. I'm going to put the Thunderhawk in with 3 counters on it, and get those 3 gnomes. It'd be 4 because it's equal to its power, right? And the Ethereum's giving the buff. Sorry, this is actually 5 off the Seed Ship because of the Ethereum. So let's see what we can discover for 5. Padim's great. We love it. A nice way to protect, some of our artifacts. And now, as we come back to our turn, we're going wide. This is a great time to see Beastmaster Ascension. This is also a great time to see the Uprising, which is going to come in and draw us a card, right? There we see Tyrian Soul Cleaver as another one, part of the Secret Lair drop. But again, I don't mind this because we're going to basically turn the Ascension online this turn if we full swing, right? Because that's going to turn that online. This is giving them all trample. We could sacrifice one of them and just buff the Thunderhulk if we want to. And then my thought is you go to combat, all 7 of these attack, right? There's your Beastmaster Ascension online, giving them all +5/+5. Aloy is going to look at the highest power among all of our creatures, which I believe is 10 from both of these guys, right? So Thunderhulk's going to attack. Well, actually, we'd have Thunderhulk go off first, right? Because then you're going to make 10 of these. And then now Ethereum would be your biggest, because Aloy doesn't target, right? So now this is for sure going to be your biggest, right? So we're going to be discovering for 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, I think. So pretty much anything we're going to see. There's the space grab. And then again, now we're in great shape. We're going to really start punishing our opponents off of these guys attacking. And now, they have to really wipe the board. But remember, you can get, you can bring in Emery. Emery could get the Thunderhulk back. Now, Ascension's sitting online and we're good to go, right? Unless somebody really wipes the board. And even if they wipe the board again, I think we have a line to get Emery in, get the Thunderhulk back, and continue to use that Beastmaster Ascension to take over the game from there. Playtest number 2 here. 4-lander with that Nettle Cyst. Karn, Legacy Reforged seems fun here. Power tough is equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. And then at the start of your upkeep, you're going to get colorless mana for each artifact you control, and you can't spend it to cast non-artifact spells, and you just get it through the end of the turn. So it's a really fun, way to get some mana. So here I'm thinking Nettle Cyst. I mean, it is just a 1/1, but it does get us a creature on board. Turn 4 here, I mean, I could have, like, the Metamorph come in as a copy of Nettle Cyst if I want to. I don't even mind just getting in Urza, right? Get that construct in, get it started. The Germ can attack if we wanted to, but otherwise, my thought is, do you go for something like Aloy this turn and just get the party started? There are unfortunately only 2/2s, aren't they? Both of them. So it actually might not be the best attack. Do you go for something like Karn? Do we go for something like Metamorph on the Nettle Cyst? Just have another option. I don't mind Karn. It gives us some extra mana for next turn to get, a couple more things in. And then I don't think we want to attack, right? I think that's pretty dangerous. So here, Karn's giving us 1, 2, 3 colorless mana. So we're at 3, 6, 9 mana. And remember, we can't use that mana to cast non-artifact spells. So we're going to use it for Metamorph. I'm thinking Aloy, Metamorph in as a copy of, my thought is the Nettle Cyst. Because then it's another, artifact that we can attach to something else. And then Karn is only a 3/3, unfortunately. But, now this construct is a 1, 2, 3, 4. The germs are all 4s, so we could attack and discover for 4. There's the Cultivate. And then again, I think we're in good shape because, now this turn, Karn is giving you, 1, 2, 3, 4. Why was it 5 last turn? I don't know what I got off there. It was 4. Sorry, not 5. right? Yeah, either way. Thoughtcast makes a ton of sense here. Just draw a couple cards, dig ourselves deeper. There's the Whir of Invention. Whir of Invention could go get a whole lot of key things right now. We've got 7 mana plus the 4 from Karn, so you've got 11. Remember, I can't use the mana to cast non-creatures or non-artifact spells, so I technically only have 7. But remember, we can improvise by tapping our artifacts. So, I mean, you could pretty much just go get. My thought would be something like Cyberman Squadron, which is 7. We would just tap our. We could tap these 3 to help out. But that gives all of our artifact creatures Myriad. What other sense makes sense here? You could get the Iron Spider in. I'm just trying to think of what in the deck makes the most sense at the current moment to go get. You could go get something like Kappa Cannoneer started and set it up. Note that it can go get non-creature artifacts. You could also go for something like Simulacrum, Synthesizer if you want to. It's not like you just have to go get. Not even mind the World Wagon, because it's going to come in as a like a 9/4, because it searches on it coming in. So that's kind of interesting. You could go get like a Sculpting Steel and get another Nettle Cyst, right? Just really spreading the love. I think there's a lot of really interesting options. Where's the Cyberman? Non-legendary artifact creatures. So, the golems wouldn't get them, because the germs wouldn't get them, because unfortunately they are not artifact creatures. So we'd have to, maybe find another way to get another construct or two if we really want to make that, that ability for something like this really worth it. So again, I think you have a couple options. You could go the World Wagon. We could go Simulacrum and get the Iron Spider in and get a couple more. Get a couple more constructs, which is my thought, because the constructs just become a. So I need 6, and I could use that mana from. Sorry, we scry 2. I like that. Use that mana from Karn to get the construct. And again, I think we're in good shape. You attack this turn. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 artifacts. And we already saw that Steel Overseer. And again, I think we're in good shape. A little bit weaker to a board wipe that time, right? We didn't really have much that would have survived it. But again, I think it's important to step through and understand how to set that board up and try to get the most right value we can. And again, I think over the course of multiple playtests, you'll learn where your pain points are, right? And how you better set it up next time and every time going forward. 4-lander here with the Steel Overseer. We got Vertibird and Filigree Attendant. So just 1 more mana needed for Aloy. And we did get it there in the Fabled Passage. I was going to say, otherwise, I kind of like this. You go Overseer. Here we get our choice of the Vertibird or the Omni Tool. So if I play the Vertibird, I can do the Overseer. Unfortunately, I can't crew that just quite yet. Or here for the Filigree Attendant. It's a 3. I mean, you could do this and then tap the Overseer to load them all up, and then the brother Vertibird could attack that turn, right? The whole intention there is just continue setting up the board. Crack the Fabled Passage. My gut says it's Aloy this turn. Crew the Brotherhood Vertibird with it. Put a counter right on all 3 of these because they're artifact creatures, and then have the Vertibird, the Filigree Attendant attack. Both of them are 5s, right? Because they're number of artifacts +2, right? Because of the counters. So we're going to discover for 5. There's the World Wagon. Love it. That's great. Again, going to be another great attacker next turn. Could potentially, right, be arguably better, depending on how many artifacts we have, right? Because the World Wagon could be arguably better now that it's based on the number of lands we have, right? Love the idea of Uthros. Research Craft could be, again, another key value piece for later. And again, it's kind of nice to get these things down that aren't creatures, because then they're going to stay safe from a board wipe that would just get rid of creatures. Kappa also really is a huge threat, right? Omni Tool's not bad either. Could really buff Aloy, turn her into a threat as well. My thought was this: crew the World Wagon with that, crew this with Aloy, and then tap the Steel Overseer to give them all a counter. Attack with Filigree Attendant, the World Wagon, and the Vertibird. World Wagon is a 7, but again, we're gonna do Vertibird. We're gonna do the World Wagon's trigger first, so that would be 7, 8, and then the Vertibird is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. So I mean, either way, we have the same thing. We're discovering for 8. We'll put that Swan Song in our hand, and again, now we have some really nice threats. And I think we just continue to, try our best to hit hard. As we can do, but there's the desync, which would be a really nice way to potentially soften the board up in front of us. But you look at Metalwork Colossus, it's coming down for 6 less, right? Because of those 2 artifacts there, so it would come down for just 5, right? I really like the Research Craft here, just to get it growing. It's another one of those nice key threats. You could station up. It also draws us cards when we cast artifacts. And again, I think we're in a good spot. You could start to see this growing. If somebody wipes the board, which would stink, Eloy could at least come back in and crew up the Vertibird if you want it to, just allowing it to then still get an attack across even the turn it comes back in. And if we move, if we went, Research Craft into let's see what, use Eloy to station it just so we can draw a card. Get Domini Tool in, draw a card. Now you could either station this up if you want to, or again, just use these guys to crew up and keep attacking. And again, I think we're just going to keep discovering some good threats. Again, I think so much of the deck's long-term potential is going to come down to what do you value. I think I like the idea of these star creatures that care about the number of artifacts and making each of them into a threat, but I think it just comes down to finding what brand you want. Here, play this 4/4-lander with, there's the Synthesizer, there's the Beastmaster Ascension, and there's a Farseek. I like that a ton. Here, you might as well Farseek. Remember, Farseek comes with the Secret Lair and that pretty new art. This turn, I'm just synthesizing. I'm going to scry 2. Love the Thunderhulk, love the Squadron. We're just kind of working our way up, right? Put the Squadron on the bottom, put this in our hand. Get Aloy in. The problem is Aloy doesn't trigger Synthesizer necessarily, but it could help on a future turn. Again, I love the idea of just something like Guardian Project to keep drawing, but I think I'll just get Aloy in. Station up the Overthrows. Well, there's the Iron Spider. That can grow. That can give us a construct, which I like the idea of. Just continue to grow up the Uthros. Again, can't attack there that turn, so that's fine. There's another artifact to up the counts on the constructs. Still 5 mana this turn. Beastmaster Ascension could be an option. Iron Spire could just tap to put a counter on the construct if we wanted to. Thought Monitor is coming in for 1, 2, 3, 4 less, so it's just coming in for 3 mana. I don't even hate the idea of that. You make a construct, you draw 2, right? It's the land for land for turn we missed. And then just 2 mana left, but that's okay. You can attack with the construct. The construct say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. So we're doing that for 6. There's Canoptic Spider, going to get us another construct. And then now, it would have been 7 because we put the counter on it with Iron Spider. Well, I guess the Iron Spider probably waits, right? If we know we're going to get more things in. And then now, right, basically know you can just get a counter on all these guys. And then now, right, unless somebody really wipes the board, we're in great shape. Put the Beastmaster Ascension in. You got 5 mana left. Get the Vertibird in. Get another construct. That draws us a card off the spider. And again, I think we just, you could get the soaring, tap with the iron spider, put the counters on, and again, now we're going to be discovering for 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think. And again, we're just in good shape, I think, from that point. So again, it comes down to filling up your board of those artifact creatures, get them attacking, and bring the pain to your opponents. But let them know, what do you think of Aloy down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.